Hello, this is Stephen Hawley Martin. Thanks for joining me. In this show, we're going to talk with Denise Linn about her book, Past Lives, Present Miracles, which maintains a 4.5-star rating on Amazon. We will also learn about Denise Linn's near-death experience when she was only 17 years old. She was shot by a psychopath. I think you're going to find that interesting. And by the way, if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just put Stephen Hawley Martin, that's Stephen with a PH, into the YouTube search, and it should pop up. Okay, let's get going. Denise, when you were 17 years old, what happened that changed your life and started you on the journey to where you are today?
You know, I never, ever imagined I would be talking to you or to anybody really about past lives or about reincarnation, except that for the experience I had when I was 17, which I'll tell you about in just a second, that changed my life forever. It was, what they call a turning point, I guess. And I had a little motorbike. I lived in Ohio, and I was just putzing along in the country, and what I didn't know was there was a man who was following me. He was someone I didn't know. I hadn't done anything to him, but he'd also killed a number of other people. And suddenly, in kind of an isolated area, he hit the gas and he rammed into my little motorbike. And then I got thrown off the motorbike, and I couldn't understand why he hit me. It didn't, because it was obviously done on purpose, and I couldn't, I thought, I haven't done anything to him. And I was laying on the side of the road. I watched, and he turned around, and I thought he was coming back to help me, and instead he rolled down the window and pulled out a gun. And when you're in those situations where everything seems to be, like in slow motion, it was like in such a slow motion. I couldn't believe he was aiming a gun at me, and then there was this loud explosion, and he shot me.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it was as surprising to be shot as the fact that, you always think if you do something to someone, but I hadn't done anything to him.
So this guy was just some sort of a serial killer or something, I guess.
Yeah, and I was really, really lucky, as I understand it, from the number of other people that had killed, So, and I'll tell you why I wasn't killed, I'm pretty sure of it, is what happened was as I was laying there, and I guess I'd had a lot of injury from being hit by the car, which I didn't realize at that moment. But I heard the car door open, and I heard the sound of crunching gravel, because I could hear him walking towards me. And I heard the sound of a zipper going down. I guess the other woman that he killed had sexually assaulted, I guess, after he killed her. But, and then I heard the sound of the gun cocking, and I turned and looked up at him, and for some unknown reason. To this day, I don't know what happened or why. But in that moment, maybe I was just in shock. I didn't feel any fear. And in fact, all I felt was compassion for him. It was like part of me was that 17-year-old girl who was shot and hit with a car. And there was another part of me that could feel and sense, I don't know, somehow this pain within him or this anguish. And I just felt compassion for him. And as he was aiming that gun, his arm started to shake, and it was almost like there was this internal struggle going on inside of him. And then it was as if, like a balloon letting out the air or something. His arm dropped, and he turned around and went back in the car. And I know that was what saved my life. It's like.
But he did pull the trigger?
Well, he pulled it the first time.
Uh-huh. He'd already shot you once, so he was coming to finish you off.
Yeah, and I know it was because, I think if I would have been afraid or anything he expected, but to have this woman looking, or girl, really, I was 17, looking at him, just being present, just loving him, and it sounds weird, because how can you feel, love in that moment? But, I often think of that moment, because I think if in that moment I could feel love for this guy that had just hit me with his car and shot me, it is inside of me to have love to people who are doing, things that are not so horrific. How we kind of have stuff come up in life, and I just keep remembering it's there, and I believe it's inside of all of us, that capacity to love deeply and fully.
Right. Well, then you you went to the hospital and
Right.
you almost died, or you did die. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you're not really dead unless you're on the ground, but the doctors had thought I'd died. I had what's called a near-death experience. And
could you tell us about that? Let me tell everyone, by the way, that we're speaking with Denise Linn, who's best-selling author, and she's got a new book out called Past Lives, Present Miracles, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But tell us about the near-death experience, Denise.
Well, a passerby had found me, and I was in the hospital, and I was still conscious. I mean, I could remember the journey there. I could remember when I got to the hospital and people were yelling, she's been shot, because this was a farming community in Ohio. People just didn't get shot in those days. This was 1967. But suddenly, all of the loud noise of people yelling and the bright colors and the pain, it all dissipated. And I felt like I was inside this soft black bubble. Now, people who are into this kind of thing say, well, it was the tunnel. Maybe you've heard about the tunnel. But it was, to me, it was like a bubble or a great sphere. And as if that bubble burst, people say, well, you just came out of the tunnel. Everywhere was light, and it was the most beautiful, glorious light, and it was so peaceful, and there was such a deep sense of love and familiarity. It was amazing because it all seemed so familiar, and it's like I heard this beautiful music, and it was so familiar and so.
So it's like you had been there before, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't even like I'd been there before. It was like that was home. It was like everything else was the dream. You know, you wake up in the morning and you've had a dream, and it seems real for a few seconds or a minute, and then it kind of fades.
Right.
That was the reality, and I could. There were things that at the time didn't seem strange, but on reflection seemed strange. Like I couldn't conceive of the past or the future. And I remember trying to think about it, and it didn't exist because everything just was. And I didn't seem to have a body. It's like I was this. And light and music weren't separate from each other, which again sounds kind of strange. How can they be? But it was the same thing, and I was the light and the music and the love. And the other thing that's amazing to think about it, but at the time it seemed normal, is everybody was there. Everybody who had ever lived, everybody who was going to live, we were all there, and we had individual consciousness, but at the same time we weren't separate from each other. I can't conceive this. I can't. I mean, but I can remember it, and it was just the way it was. Of course, we're all one. But
so it was the ultimate mystical experience.
It was,
like.
And it was strange too because it wasn't anything I grew up with. Even though I'm Native American on my mother's side, my mother was involved with gaining political rights for her people, and both my parents were scientists. So I wasn't raised with a religious or necessarily a spiritual upbringing. I was, raised, if you can't physically prove it scientifically, it doesn't exist. So it was so far out of my upbringing, but at the same time, it seemed normal.
Right. I'm speaking with Denise Linn, who's a best-selling author, and she's got a new book out called Past Lives, Present Miracles. Well, what do you feel you took away from? What did you learn from that near-death experience, Denise?
Well, when I was there, I never, and if you talk to people who've had near-death experiences, they'll all say the same thing. I never wanted to leave. It was like, I go back there. Are you kidding? I'm home. But there was a river of light, and going across that river of light, I knew I was going home, but suddenly there was a voice that said, it's not your time. There's some things you need to do. And I literally felt like I got roped and yanked back into my body. And my body was damaged. I lost a kidney, a spleen, a drilling gland, good part of my lung, my left lung, part of my intestines, part of my stomach. I have a 6-inch plastic tube replacing the aorta. There's still a bullet hole through my spine. I was told I would never have children. There was a lot of damage done, but I came back with some awarenesses that have really, in no small way, dictated my destiny. And what those awarenesses was, one is everything is energy. I can remember I got pushed in a wheelchair out into the hospital lawn, and I looked at every blade of grass had energy around it, and light and sound, and I was seeing life as I'd seen it before, but at the same time I was sensing and seeing this other dimension to life.
So it hadn't, the experience hadn't worn off. You were still experiencing that light, that energy, after you were back and on the way out of the hospital.
Yeah, and again, it didn't seem strange. It seemed like, well, it was normal. And you know how there's dogs, and there's these dog whistles, and you blow them, and they can hear sounds you can't hear? It's kind of like somehow my seeing and hearing had expanded, so I could see things. And, now I know that that's not unusual. There's lots of people that can see, auras, they call them, or light around things and hear sounds. But
do you still now see auras?
I do. I'm more kinesthetic now, but there are times when it's like I can feel someone's aura, like you have a lot of green in your aura. But in terms of that visualness, it only comes...
I have green in my aura?
You do. It's gorgeous.
What does green do?
Well, for me, and and again, this is very subjective. You talk to a lot of people, and they'll have different points of view. But to me, my sense is, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this interview with you, is that I feel within you there is the capacity to facilitate healing, and that green energy that's kind of the balance between the warm colors and the cool colors and the auric field, and also in the rainbow spectrum. Is that's that balance point. And also my sense was that you would, in the interviews that you do, because you have that green in your aura, is you're going to offer a balanced point of view. You're not going to you're going to say to the people, here's some information you might find useful. So.
Well, that's certainly what I try to do. And I'm speaking with Denise Linn, best-selling author. Her new book is Past Lives, Present Miracles. Well, then, you had this experience. You realized it opened your eyes to a reality that you didn't know existed before, and you decided to become a healer. Is that correct? How did you decide to become a healer?
I did, because I healed really quickly. I think I'm still written up in medical journals. And, I was healthy to begin with, and I was 17, and certainly there's something to be said for the healing ability of youth. But also, given that, the doctors were startled and amazed at how quickly I healed, especially when the damage was so severe. But I feel that inside of all of us is that life force energy, that ability to activate our life force energy. And it's like we have an ember inside, and maybe it's almost like the winds of heaven blew over my ember and made it into a little flame. But I discovered not only was I able to heal my own body very quickly, but eventually I found that I had the ability to really help and facilitate the healing of others. So I stepped into being the healer. And along the journey, I'd also, when I was on that other side, had the sense of, I didn't see, like some people when they have near-death experiences, they see all their past lives, and I didn't have that, but I had the sense that life is not a one-shot affair, that we are each infinite and eternal, but we take on, just the same way you put different coats on and different sweaters on, we take on different lifetimes.
And we take on different personalities and so forth.
Personalities, and it's all, it's all for us to learn and grow and experience different aspects of self. But I found that information was really valuable in the healing work I did with people, so I began to use past life regression in conjunction with the healing work that I did.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've been reading your book, and it's fascinating. I highly recommend it. I'm not quite finished yet, but I will finish it. And I noticed that you discovered through your own situation that past lives can have an effect on you today in the present, and that by going back and remembering those past lives, you can solve problems that you might have or issues that you have in the present. How did that come to you? Could you tell us the story of how you learned that?
Well, I'll take a little step back. Is often trying to deal with or heal problems in the present sometimes can be like mowing over dandelions. You mow them over and they keep popping back up again.
Right, I've had that situation.
And it's like, God, I thought I dealt with that. And so that's why going back, and psychologists do this, they'll take you back into your childhood, because often the experiences that we have when we're younger facilitate a belief about the way the world is, or facilitates even, blockages that we carry with us into our present. So you go back and you unweave the decisions and beliefs taken on in childhood, and it makes a difference in your current, in your present time,
sure,
present life. But sometimes you go back and it doesn't. And it is that point that when you go back into a past life, that you can actually get to the roots, and it doesn't need to take long. The past life therapy, sometimes people say it's miraculous. It's not miraculous. It's not a miraculous if you go to the roots of the dandelion and pull it up, and it doesn't come back again. It's just you've gone to the roots.
Right.
So it's really affected my life in a lot of ways. One way was before I did past life work and kind of went back into my own life, I got really uncomfortable with possessions, and we had no money, and we had a pad on the floor, my husband and I, and a chair, just a bare minimum. And and if anyone gave me anything, I got really anxious, and I would give it away. And my husband said, it's lucky that the doorknobs are nailed on, because otherwise you'd give the doorknobs away.
Right.
And that makes living life, when you feel uncomfortable with any possessions, really uncomfortable. And I went back to a past life as a Franciscan monk. And in that life, I remember taking vows of poverty. And I believe that the vows that we take in the past can deeply influence you. And so because I'd taken those vows of poverty, that's why I had that anxiety every time I had anything, because I'd taken a vow. So I just went back and I relinquished those vows, and I took a vow of abundance. And I'm happy to say I'm very abundant now. But I do not believe I would be abundant if I wouldn't have gone back into the past and simply shifted that vow that I'd taken so long ago.
Well, that brings up another question, Denise. Two questions, really. The first one is, how do we go back and remember those? How do we remember those lives? What do we need to do? What techniques can you offer for us to remember? And then once we do, how do we release those things? How do we overcome those obstacles that we've discovered?
Well, there's a number of ways you can go back to discover who you were. And I got so excited doing this book because I know not everybody can go to a past life therapist or get a past life regression. So in the center of the book there's a whole series of questions that if you answer these questions, that by the end of the time, you start to really form an idea about who you were and what you did. But so that's one thing you can do. It's just, simple things like what games did you play as a kid, or what were those deja vu experiences, or what countries have you always been attracted to or never wanted to go to? And it's like being a past life detective. So you put all the clues together, and the picture begins to form. But another way is to do a past life regression, and those are fantastic. I've got, on iTunes or HeyHouse.com, I have past life regressions that people can listen to, and I get emails and letters all the time of people saying, I never thought I could just listen to this meditation and it would make a difference. So there seems to be, when you're in that relaxed state, the ability to travel back in time and to begin to experience, even spontaneously, those images. And I've had a number of people get an image, a time, a date, and actually go to that country and research it. And sure enough, there was someone who lived in that village with that name. But that's really not, I'm not so much interested in proving past lives as in the results that it can produce. And then a third way is to actually get a past life regression therapist to work with you one-on-one.
Right. I'm speaking with Denise Linn, and her book is Past Lives, Present Miracles. Well, you said that you can go to, let's let our listeners know, you can go to HeyHouse.com, is that it, to find this regression?
Oh, thank you so much. HeyHouse.com sells CDs and tapes, I think, yes, tapes and CDs of past life regressions that I've done. And
so it's www.HeyHouse, HeyHouse.com, is that correct?
Yes, you're the best. Thank you. I'm just speeding right through it. Yeah, and also iTunes sells those past life regressions as well.
Okay.
And the great thing is you can just listen to them before bed, and it's not uncommon to have past life dreams then, and to have those, the memories and the images begin to emerge in your dream state.
Well, I have a couple of past life memories and things that I think are still blocking me in a couple of areas. How do I release them, though? I know what happened and what I think happened and what the result is, but what I haven't been able to do is overcome and have it, erase it from my subconscious.
Right. Absolutely. Just knowing often isn't enough. And there's some, you can actually see. From when I know I sound like I'm stuttering, but when I was on the other side during the near-death experience, I had the experience that time was malleable. And from that perception, people say, well, the future's malleable, but the past, that's carved in stone. But my belief is that it's actually not, that you can go back and literally change the past. Now, my brother, who's a physicist, said, well, actually, there might be some scientific, reason that might be so.
I was going to say that theoretically is possible according to quantum physics, and in fact there are experiments where it appears that the past may have been changed by something that happened in the present or the future. So,
yeah, when I start talking with my astrophysicist brother, I get really confused. But it was my experience and it is my belief. But even if someone says, oh, you cannot change the past that dictates our life, because out of our past and our memories come our belief and decisions about who we are, and out of that comes the way we relate to life. Those dwell in our brains. So even if someone says, oh, you can't really change the past, if you can go back into those memories and change those memories, like if someone has a whole lot of memories of being a victim their whole life, and they can go back and change them so that they are in control of their life, that's simply changing those memories and those visualizations has been shown to have an effect. The same way people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. You've probably heard that before.
Yeah, sure.
And simply going in and visualizing yourself giving a talk has been shown to help someone overcome that fear, even without giving the talk. So if you can go back into whatever that memory was that you said you had about your past life and change it. And even if you think, oh, I don't want to change it because I can't change it, but you're changing the memory, and if you change the memory, you begin to change those decisions and beliefs that you took on at the time.
Okay, well, that's what I'll do. Well, we're speaking with Denise Linn. Her new book is Past Lives, Present Miracles. What else would you like to tell us? Any helpful hints or things you can let us know? Or what advice do you have for us, Denise?
Well, it's not really to do with past lives, but I believe that the soul loves the truth. And if I had any advice for anybody, it would be to spend time every day looking to see what is my truth in this moment. What am I experiencing? What am I feeling? What is real for me now? Because often I think we get into a place of thinking that we're feeling what we should be feeling or what others would like us to be feeling or experiencing or doing, and we're living life to please others, for example.
Yeah.
So it's just, if I had any, it's kind of an open-ended question, but I guess that would be my advice, The soul loves the truth. Find your truth and live your truth.
Find your truth and live your truth. That is wonderful advice. You have a website or a place that we... I have a website.
It's a work in progress, but it's Denise Linn, DeniseLinn.com. And that's my website.
Good. Well,
come and visit. Anyone, come and visit me. I have a newsletter that goes out making it my own words here, periodically.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting and enlightening interview, and I've enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate having this time with you.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are many more interesting shows there. Check them out, and I'll talk to you next time.